The Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia. For over 30 years, they have been the go-to destination for all your music merch needs. From working with today's hottest bands to create truly one-of-a-kind pieces, as well as boasting a truly massive online store, Rockabilia is your one-stop shop when it comes to band merch. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. Huge thanks to Rockabilia for their continued support, and now, on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Keith Wallen, of himself, of Breaking Benjamin. This was a really fun chat. We kind of get into a lot of different things, and honestly, it was kind of interesting because I always kind of like doing these conversations with people from bigger bands that you're probably more aware of, and then they kind of do a solo thing or a new project, and I always love getting the people on at that point because I think it really kind of gets to give them the excuse to kind of, showcase more who they are versus, just being this entity from this big band and all this kind of stuff. And Keith and I really had a great time chatting. And I also want to thank him as well for actually the hangs with my wife and I when the Breaking Ben tour came through here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's interesting. I realized I don't think I had been to I call it Wing Stadium, and now I realize I'm old because I guess it changed its name to Wings Event Center at some point. There's a handful of venues here in Michigan that will forever be known as what they were always known as. So Wings is always going to be Wing Stadium. DTE is now back to DTE, or no, I think it's back to Pine Knob. I think it's still owned by DTE, so it's DTE Pine Knob or something something like that. But it's always been Pine Knob. Everyone knows it as such here, but all that said, it was kind of interesting going to Wing Stadium because I don't think I had been there other than for a wrestling show years ago with my wife. I don't think I had seen a concert in that venue since Tool and Meshuggah back in like 2002. So it'd been 22 years since I'd seen a show at that place. And something I kind of thanked Keith for in the moment, just a weird aside, but outside, I think at this point, Little Caesars Arena and maybe a few other arenas, technically in the Detroit area, I now have pretty much, because of the podcast, have been to the backstage green room area of just about every venue here in the States. So it's been pretty cool kind of getting to see that. It was kind of interesting just seeing the behind the scenes. And, and I talk about that quite a bit of just, the behind the scenes and how I find a lot of those things interesting. I also really like to share a really funny story as well of trying to find Keith at the venue. So I had gotten some donuts, and spoiler alerts to the end of the episode kind of, but I'd gotten the band and crew some donuts. There's a really rad donut place in Kalamazoo called Sweetwater's Donuts. I think they're one of the best donuts, hands down. They're open 24/7, so they are just constantly pumping out fresh donuts. And, as you'll kind of hear me allude to later, it is something that I like to kind of try to give some local flavor to the people coming through towns, things that are a little bit beyond maybe the venue or that a runner may, go get them for. So it was a thing where I'm carrying these donuts and I'm trying to find Keith to give him these donuts and get into the venue. And security is doing their part, and they're not letting me back, which is fine. No one seemed to have the proper credential paperwork, so my pass didn't quite work at the time. Fast forward, the donuts get to Keith. I'm walking into the venue with my wife. We have floor tickets, passes, whatever you want to call them. And someone's like, hey, you need to go get a wristband to be on the floor. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so I'm like, well, where do you go get that? Because I wasn't, no one stopped me. So I'm informed of where these wristbands are supposed to be. It's, you go through this door back into the like concourse of the stadium, and then basically you follow it to the right. And I was like, okay. So I follow it right to this gentleman who was where they said he would be. I show him my ticket. He tells me that even though he's got a whole bunch of wristbands that are for what I see people wearing on the floor, that I need to keep going around the other way to another ticketing type kiosk thing to get my wristband. And I'm like, okay. So we keep wandering around the rest of the concourse of the stadium, arena, whatever. And I come to an old man waiting where everything's kind of blocked off, basically like to the backstage area. And I was like, sir, I'm seemingly can't find this thing I need. I don't know where I need to be to get this wristband. And he's of no help, essentially. He doesn't know either. He basically tells me to go back the way I came, probably to the person that I had actually already talked to, who sent me on a fool's errand. And then I don't know if this dude was like basically the back, like security, like head of security or whatever, but and I forget the gentleman's name, I apologize, but he was actually handing this gentleman the photo sheet of like all the passes that are acceptable and where you can go with them. And he was like, "Oh, you guys got, your passes on, you're good. You can come back here. The only place you can't go is the dressing rooms unescorted." And so I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And then he goes, "Wait, are you the one that was just trying to bring the donuts in?" And I go, "That was me." And he goes, "Oh, well, do you know where Keith is?" And I said, "Yes, he is presumably backstage in the dressing room, trying to get a hold of him now. I was told to meet him by this door, and they're all numbered." And he goes, "Oh, well, just follow me." So I'm talking with this gentleman for a little bit, and Keith finally comes out and takes my wife and I, and we end up having a solid chat for about 20, 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, and kind of picking things up from this podcast where we left off. And it just was a great evening of hangs. I really wanted to thank the gentleman for taking probably 10 minutes or so to chat with my wife and I and kind of talk about the inner going-ons of what's happening to the arena. Apparently it is moving to downtown, and it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with the old stadium, what they end up what the new one's going to look like, and just the everyone's excited in the city for it to move and be more of like an entertainment district downtown. I think unfortunately, the venue where it's at now is just, it's so far away from everything, and it just really isn't a good spot to try to go see a show or foster entertainment to come in. If you go to a lot of shows and go to arenas and so forth, that basically they're centrally located in downtown of whatever city they're in. So it'll be weird to see a new stadium come in, but it'll be rad to see the new one when it's all built and gone, to see what it looks like. And I want to thank Keith, like I said, for just the opportunity to rip a hang with my wife and I, and for the hospitality, and also just to kind of knock another little venue off my bucket list that holds kind of a lot of early childhood memories of going to shows for me. So with all of that said, let's get into my conversation with Keith, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. We're a couple of months away at this point from your solo record coming out, and kind of looking at your career from afar. I always find it interesting, the people who do a lot of things. Like you obviously play guitar in Breaking Benjamin. You have a solo thing. You've also been in Adelita's Way. You write for other artists and so forth. I always wonder, how does one compartmentalize all the ideas? And especially when it comes to putting your name on it, how do you know that this is Keith? This is Keith's music, and it needs to be for you.
That's a common question I get asked. I don't know. I don't really think too much about it. I think I think every song that is going to be delved into, it's a kind of a project by project basis, so I can kind of differentiate it that way. Most of the time people ask me, how do you decide whether or not a song's going to be a Breaking Benjamin song or as opposed to, a solo song. And really it's just two different bands, Breaking Benjamin has it's got a sound, the band's had a sound for a while, long before I was even in the band, so I think we try to stay true to that, but obviously try to evolve as well, and not be too formulaic with everything. But yeah, I think fans, I think they've come to expect a certain kind of sound, and so we kind of keep that in mind. And then with my stuff, I think, it's just two different vocalists. Ben sounds like Ben, I sound like Keith. So that kind of sets it apart naturally there. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's rock. It's rock music. It's hard rock. It's metal. Melodic metal, I guess. And just I don't know. Things just kind of come out differently. I think I almost have a little bit more freedom with my material and my music and my writing for my stuff, because I am just a solo artist, also. So I'm just free to be and do whatever I want. If I'm feeling heavy, let's turn it up. If I want to write something that's more kind of, I don't know, mid-tempo, slower based, I can kind of, tap into that also. So, but yeah.
I just find the idea, I guess, of when there's, I kind of take it a step further, I guess, for an example. So like I have a handful of other podcasts that I do, and it's interesting because now one of them is out in the world, and we'll call that more of like my solo project. And
Gotcha.
It was kind of interesting because I don't think that I'm inauthentically myself on this or even on the other show, but I feel like I allowed myself to showcase more who I am on the other thing because it's with my best friends. It's kind of more chill. We're all literally in the same room together, looking at each other, kind of vibing
Right.
off each other. And it's been interesting to get feedback from people who only know the 6+7 years of this, and they're like, "Oh, you're actually really funny, and it's crazy how like you do these things or
Yeah.
whatever." And it's been really interesting to kind of take it in because I've kind of said that this is sort of a correlation to, music industry, where it's the first time I've really put in a lot of effort into something and actually seen results that are tangible, that you can mark and go, wow, okay, it's getting this many downloads, it's doing this. This is now, I think I made a joke that, where I'm at is about where like a club level band, like we can play these kind of rooms consistently. Maybe we'll get, I might get that one guest that you're like, okay, now we're the opening band on an arena run. This is kind of cool. Like,
Yeah.
we're here. But it's
great.
not often that I think I've really been able to kind of differentiate and I just kind of keep coming back to the compartmentalization of life, of like, how do you know when to give so much of yourself to a thing and when to kind of cut it off. I think I lost you maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Can you see me okay? Hear me and everything? You've been
Yep, I can see you.
blurry
Came
from the
back.
get-go on my end.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So I have full signal on my end, so I don't know.
yeah, I'm pretty much golden over here. I guess to answer that question, to delve into it a little more. Yeah, I kind of know what you're saying, whereas, you kind of get with the group of friends and maybe, you're kind of a little bit, the defenses aren't as up as much, you're kind of around your people, your comfort zone a little bit, and I think that's another difference with Breaking Benjamin is, there's more than one person, and so the writing and ideas and all that stuff has really been a lot of collaboration. I mean, obviously, Ben is just, a huge part of that. But, on the other side of that, with my stuff, it's pretty much just, it's me, I have a band that I play with, and, different, songwriters and producers that I've had just the fortunate luck to get in the room with, to work on stuff with. But, I feel like for the most part, I make a lot of these, creative decisions, for better or for worse. So that's one thing that's different, it's like all on me, so, that's definitely a different thing and a different approach, but also, a good thing about that is like, I can say, through my music, I can really use those lyrics to really just express what I want to express, what I'm feeling, what I want to say, how I want to say it, without any other person being like, I don't know, man. And like, so I could be wrong with some of my stuff that, that I do, but at the end of the day, it's from my heart, and, for better or for worse, I just throw it out there. So
I think, and it's also kind of interesting too, something I was thinking of, because I just got the record today, so I kind of been making my way through it, but
oh, cool.
It's always interesting to think about, again, kind of like the duality and the different lives we lead, I guess. But, like looking back through, it's like, the way that this record's being hyped, it almost felt like it was like your debut solo record. And it's like, upon digging, it's like, obviously you've been putting out singles, EPs and so forth, and had an
Sure.
album a handful of years ago. And so I always kind of wonder, is it sort of like a bit of a challenge to not, and the only thing I kept kind of coming up to is not feeling unsatisfied in your solo career, because I feel like you have this small window to do something in between everything else you're doing. Yeah. So I could see it being a thing where perhaps you're really excited about this record coming out. Obviously, you're getting a bunch of touring opportunities and so forth, opening for different bands and hitting the road as your solo thing. But then that at X amount of time, well, now I have to go back to my main gig. Like, is it sort of hard to find these little pockets for your solo thing to where it's like it satiates you internally, but you don't get to have the full momentum of like, we're building the single, we're building the touring cycle and everything, and really giving this like its full proper go?
Yeah, I think that as much as I can give it a proper go, we are. And there's even if I said, even if I just had this one thing, it's almost impossible to just tour 300 days a year. There's going to have little breaks, there's going to be little things. I mean, so I think it's just, I've really made a point to really try and fill those gaps. I've got these two things, and wherever there's the gap, I try to fill it with solo stuff. But as far as being unsatiated and feeling just unsatisfied, I don't think I'll ever be satisfied. I really don't. I feel like it's I've been doing music for so long. I mean, over 20 years, over 25 years or something like that, from first learning how to play and starting in bands, and but like with this whole solo thing, I mean, it's relatively kind of a new thing, I think, to people. But to me, I feel like I've just been doing this forever. So I'm just like, man, I just got to keep climbing up this hill, and there's like such a long way to go. You even described your show here, as kind of a club level band, and like, hey, maybe we're first of three on an arena tour or something like that. I'm trying to get there, as a solo artist. I mean, obviously Breaking Benjamin, we're playing arenas and, the sheds and the amphitheaters and everything. And, so I'm trying to get to that next level with the solo stuff. And I don't even look at it really as a side project. I look at it as a main project. It's just another main project, obviously Breaking Ben is a priority, and this is of equal priority to me as Breaking Benjamin. So I think, we're living in this universe where both of those things can exist, albeit it's difficult for me because it's a lot of damn work. But but I go back to when I'm first, plunking away on a guitar when I'm, 16, and, I didn't even have the dream yet of, man, I wonder if I could do this for a living one day. It hadn't even gone through my head yet. And, so now to like look back at that and see how far I've come, it's just mind blowing. So I'm incredibly grateful to be able to do this for a living. And, it's a lot of work doing this two thing, but I live for this shit. I really do. And I tell people this all the time. I mean, I even say this on stage sometimes, because lots of people are just like, hey man, you got this Breaking Benjamin thing. Why even do another thing? And I mean, isn't that a lot of extra work? And I mean, couldn't you just, be home and, enjoy a litlittle vacation? And I'm like, yes, I could, but I know there's going to be one day when I'm just older, and it's like an athlete, they kind of lose their step and they're not able to dunk and not able to hit home runs anymore. I know I'm going to be at that point where I'm like, I can't sing the way I can sing right now. I can't play guitar. I'll have like arthritic hands. You know what I mean? I just like see this old version of me, and I don't want that guy to be like, man, I should have got out there and played as many damn shows as I could and just hit it while I could. So I'm trying to avoid future regret, and I just want to make as much music as I can while I'm alive on this earth. So, yeah.
I think there just becomes this sort of, and I've been trying to figure it out, and I don't really know that anyone can kind of pinpoint what it is or what drives us to do this, but there seems to be this thing in people that are roughly our age range. I think you're about 4 years older than me. I think if Wikipedia is to be believed, and you were born in the 80, so you got 4 years on me. But it's a thing where I feel
Thanks,
like,
by the way, thanks for outing me.
I've been outing myself. I keep telling everyone I can't wait to be 40 in a couple of months and just be done with it and hit the big number, and then the rest is just whatever. But I think because of that kind of hitting this milestone, and a lot of people feeling, honestly, it's interesting that a lot of people are so afraid to get older, and I feel like it's almost something that I feel is a badge of honor. Like, you earn the right to be 40. Like, for the most part, you can't just be fucking oblivious to everything and just magically make it to 40. Like, you kind of have to grow and learn and become somewhat of a functioning person to do that.
Sometimes, yeah. I think the majority of us, strive for that. It definitely takes some navigation.
But I think the other thing that I keep landing on is that, a lot of people, when they ask me about this show or like a lot of the other things we do, like, I'm married, we go to shows, we do a bunch of other stuff, working, like, there's so many facets to your life. And I think something that I always come back to, that a lot of people, like, you just do a lot of shit. Like, when do you chill out? When do you not work? When do you not kind of hustle? When do you not do these things? And I feel like the thing I keep coming back to is, I think people of our generation have seen, like, our grandparents and so forth, when they get older, they just, I retire, and then they do nothing, and they don't have a purpose or a function. And we would see so many people just so quick to die off because they didn't have any reason to live, really, for lack of a better term. And I feel like that's sort of where maybe it's been ingrained in all of us to be like, we just got to keep working and work and work and work. And eventually, either when our facilities aren't capable to do the things anymore, that's kind of when we start slowing down and maybe find a different avenue to do something. But I always find that people that are just go-getters and keep going, it's like, I feel a lot of people are just like, when are you going to stop? And it's like, when my body tells me to. But it's interesting to hear that you're kind of in that same boat, where I think you realize, like, I only have this amount of time to do something at this high of a level, and I need to get it all in when I still can.
Oh, absolutely. And not just that, I find that if I'm not busy, I find that, I'm absolutely an advocate for the protection and upkeep of our mental health, and if I'm not busy, man, my mind wanders, and I'm just like, what are you doing with your life? I'm just like, I'm laying here like a piece of shit. Like, get up and do something with your life. And so I think that just staying busy and granted, our fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers from yesteryear, they had way more, incredibly hard, difficult careers and jobs that we have now. So, props to them. So, I feel like in comparison, doing some social media work, on my off touring days is not too bad, but still, yeah. I mean, I just try to stay as busy as I can, just to keep me sane and to keep me, just moving forward mentally. I think it really helps. And again, that just goes back to just, my future self, being an old person, thinking back, just like, man, pedal to the metal. And I want to think back and be like, you know what, I really gave it my all, and whatever happened, whatever, I gave it my all, and I can live with that.
It's kind of interesting. I stumbled across this probably a week or so ago, I feel like. Because the song Headspace Holiday, was it Holiday Hit? Sorry, I always get, when things are doubled up like that, like two of the same letter, I'm always like,
that was it.
Flip it around. Okay. So, because there's also Hooligan's Holiday from Motley Crue, the album they did with John Rotten, that I always think of when I see that song title. I'm like, am I getting these backwards? But it was interesting, like, you were just kind of saying, like, sometimes I don't want to, like, lay on my back at night and just be like, oh, you're a piece of shit. Like, I will get into this habit at times where I will lay in bed. And it's funny, I had this epiphany of, like, going to bed is, like, one of the few things where you have to fake doing what you're doing. Like, you go to bed and you close your eyes, but you're not sleeping yet. You're just kind of faking it until you fall asleep. But I had this weird epiphany the other day where I was thinking to myself, is there a moment in my life that I can go back and pinpoint that made me a lot of who I am now? And I was able to do it, but it was kind of a very, like, to use like an Inside Out reference, but I unlocked like a core memory where I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I just unlocked all of this and really pinpointed something back to being like 6, 7.
Yeah.
And so when I kind of was listening to the song today, it kind of made me wonder, what does holiday headspace mean to you? Because to me, I feel like it's something we should be more mindful of taking the time sometimes to go down those rabbit holes we'll have internally, but also to kind of give yourself permission to, like, literally not think of anything and to just kind of be. It's almost like a grounding of sorts is almost how I take it now.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. It really is, I mean, the lyrics just say it, they really do. I mean, and sometimes that happens, you wake up just kind of in your own head for whatever reason, your chemicals are just off balance that day. You had a weird dream or something. Sometimes you just wake up off. And plus just the state of the world and the state of everything that, is happening. I mean, there's so much bad news just on the news and social media and everything. It's just a lot of bombardment from all angles of different things, and rarely is it anything good or inspiring. So it's it can be overwhelming, and it can be a lot to absorb. And I think sometimes you just need to just try not to think about anything for a little bit, and like you said, reset. It's funny you just said how you kind of like almost fake going to sleep to like eventually go to sleep. That's really honestly a kind of a microcosm of just my life, because the whole slogan, fake it till you make it. You really just keep going through the motions and keep doing it until things are really just kind of keep building traction eventually with a career or whatever it is a person does. Because there's definitely moments in your life where I know I've gone through these moments and times that were tough, and where there was absolutely no encouragement from anyone, albeit maybe just a one person, someone that's really close to you. And my wife, she was behind me for so many years, and just your friends and your family, but even sometimes though not necessarily. Sometimes people make decisions, they want to go out on a certain path in their life, and they don't really exactly have the support from people that they hold dear, which is tough. But you just got to keep you just got to keep pushing through that. I know I went through those times where there was no encouragement, there was just doors, career opportunities and things just slamming in my face, and you just got to believe in yourself. And, not to sound like a after school special or anything, but it really is true. You gotta believe in yourself, especially when no one else will. Sometimes that's all we got. And, so yeah.
It's interesting. this might be, and this is just like a question that literally popped in my head, and I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to rationalize one versus the other, because I feel like it makes it seem like a competition when I don't really think it is. But
Okay.
Because to me, like, let's say you have, one of your songs gets like a sync opportunity or something, and just really like takes off and goes bigger than you had anticipated it to do.
Yeah.
Will that mean more to you personally because it's your thing versus a song you wrote or with somebody else, or anything you'll do in Breaking Ben? Like, is there even a separation of accolades?
That is a really good question. All of these have been really incredible questions, by the way.
Thank you.
But this one is especially intriguing. Honestly, I don't know. I don't feel like I've really had a song on any kind of different island, let's just say, that really just like really did something crazy. So I it's hard for me to answer. I feel like I'd be thrilled to death any which way it happened. But I mean, selfishly, of course, if something that I wrote that was part of my own solo thing just did crazy amazing, I mean, that would just help. That would help financially, of course, because I mean, it leads to tours and all kinds of other things, and an outlet, rather, whether if it was someone else, and it's like, well, then they're going to be touring crazy on the song, and so you only kind of get one aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think let's just say I think it would be a great problem to have, and I'm ready for it.
Well, and part of me, what kind of brought me to that question of sorts is, so like, I live here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there is a gentleman that I know through mutual friends. And so he used to be in a bigger signed band back in the day, and then has kind of opened a studio and does, recording bands, and also still writes songs for labels and so forth.
Yeah.
And I remember just through the grapevine one day, like having a conversation with him and kind of wanting to know more about that side of things. Because to me, it's like, obviously, the more you get into the behind the scenes of the music industry, that there's songwriters, ghostwriters even, and so forth, and just how interesting it all, if you're into that kind of thing, how interesting it all is, how that side works. And I remember him making a comment about like, yeah, I had this label come to me, and we're like, okay, so we got the next Kelly Clarkson record coming out. We want like, the big first single. We want a ballad, and then kind of maybe something in between, whatever you're feeling. But we want 3 songs.
Sure.
We're going to come back to you in like 2 weeks. Dude writes, the 3 songs exactly the way they say. And it turns into this thing where, he was making the comment about like, they really like the big single thing that I wrote. And then I was like, yeah, but I really think I want it for myself. I think I really love it. I think I want to make it the next thing I'm going to be doing. And so the label and this person goes back and forth, and eventually they go, hey, well, we'll throw a, fuckload of money at you to take that song. And essentially now it is that artist's song. Yeah. And you never know that this person wrote it, had anything to do with it. Now, the irony is in some of this, that this person has said the amount of times I've sold a song for way more money than I probably should have even gotten. He'll go, yeah, but I wrote that in 5 minutes and I didn't really give a fuck about it. Like, it just was a thing I did. But I knew that they wanted it. And so I created like a bidding war, because I have my own solo things and stuff I can use it for.
Right.
So it creates this kind of interesting space where it, like, even navigating that as a business person, I think is just so interesting to how does someone, again, how I kind of started with, how do you differentiate what goes where, especially when you get contacted to write for other people, that it just becomes this thing to me where I wonder, at what point do you even look at your art, something that you came up with, does it even become a commodity of sorts, where you're just like, oh, this is just a thing I came up with, it's been sitting on a hard drive, it fits this vibe perfectly, here you go. What do you want for it?
Yeah, I'd say I don't know if I've really had that happen too much like that. I feel pretty. There's been a few times where I've written something and I've sent it out to some different people, and then I've been like, man, I've regretted it, for whatever reason, whether I wanted it for myself or something. But at the end of the day, just getting your music out there to people is really important. But I would feel really just horrible about signing something away and not even getting credit for it. I mean, even if, I would hate that, especially if it was just like this huge, massive song and, you heard it everywhere, and then we were just a ghostwriter on it. That, to me, that would be just the fucking worst. That would be awful. Yeah.
And to me, I think that's the interesting thing. And I don't want to say it's one way is better than the other. Like, I'm not saying that at all. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still making your livelihood based on music you are creating and all that. And you get to live that, dream that most everyone who wants to do that is doing. But I think there's a weird thing, and I've kind of really been thinking more about it. It was just like, at what point do you understand that you have something that people want and it's a commodity, but you're not, quote unquote, selling yourself short or selling out, that you still have to satiate your creative input and output and be happy with who you are at the end of the day? And I think that's just I think it's probably a bigger life question, because I think a lot of us probably would take shortcuts in our personal lives to get further along. And I think that's kind of really where I'm coming at with the idea. But I think it's so much, I guess it's just a little bit more cut and dry and for lack of a better term, more pure from looking at it coming from the musical industry side of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, I don't know. I think everybody is interested in having some kind of, financial motivation behind, selling a song and writing a particular song and pitching it to a particular person or whatever. But I mean, I try to just really think back to, just where I started and just like writing my first couple songs and just trying to get better at my craft and trying to get better at singing and trying to get better at lyrics and all those things. And just having any opportunity to write with someone else and try to combine, creative minds and see what happens. I mean, I think that's just a really rewarding thing in itself. And just being able to have an opportunity to have music that I've written or that I've been a part of see the light of day and get out there for people to listen to. So, I mean, that's thrilling to me, hearing a song that I wrote on the radio, whether it's me, whether it's Breaking Benjamin, whether it's whoever, it never gets old ever. And I don't think it ever will. It's awesome. So, and I mean, obviously, being able to maybe afford to buy an extra taco or burrito every once in a while, you gotta like that. I kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I believe when I was looking at some of the stuff a while ago, because I'd actually had your bandmate Jason on when he was doing the Love and Death stuff. Awesome. I believe you were helping write some of the stuff on their last record, correct? Yes. Yep.
So here's kind of maybe another weird question I just kind of popped in my head.
Okay.
How is it working with someone that you work with in one capacity on a different thing? Is there any... I would assume you're bringing a bunch of the familiarity of doing that, but it's not the same thing. So I wonder, what were some of the challenges maybe that you ran into working together in a different facet for a different band?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if there's any negatives, with working with Jason. I mean, Jason's one of my best friends. I mean, any chance I get to work with him on a creative basis, whether it's Breaking Benjamin, whether it's, my stuff, another project, I mean, like Love and Death. I mean, it was awesome. It was really cool. And I mean, he kind of introduced me to that whole circle with Head and the Love and Death guys. And so I was super grateful for that. And that was a fun project for sure. That was one of those times where, it was the middle of the whole COVID pandemic thing. There was, like I said, there was no good news on the TV. and so it was a great project to have to just keep, our minds going and to keep busy and to be creative. And that was a super awesome experience. And yeah, Jason and I work great together. I met him a long time ago, back when I still was in my first band, and he had just gotten out of his band Red, and he was just doing the writing and producing full time. And we worked on a project. We worked on Pillar, one of their albums with producer Rob Graves. And we laugh about it now because it was the first time we'd worked together, and I drove from Knoxville to Nashville in my 1989 Mercedes car. I got this great deal on this super old Mercedes. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm driving a Mercedes. But man, it was so old, and I literally showed up to Nashville and it was smoking. And he comes out of the studio and he's like, hey, nice ride. I'm like, you like that? Yeah. It was like smoke. So we laugh about it now because I was like, that's how we first kind of started working together. We had met before. My first band, Copper, played a show with Red one time before that, but that was the first time we really kind of hung out.
It's just always interesting to think about, again, and it's just kind of how relationships and stuff like that. I've been really fascinated with the idea of relationships and how we as people will, I guess it comes more to just how we are in these relationships. So if in working environments, not everyone can be an A-type personality. Sometimes you have to understand that I need to take a back seat and be more of a complimentary role player, or sure, if something's not working, then address that accordingly and move forward. But just thinking about how, again, we've kind of been talking about compartmentalizing different parts of your life and so forth. I think it even kind of correlates into relationships. And so when I kind of remembered that you were working or had worked on a couple of songs on that record, it's okay, this isn't what you're used to working on with him. Does the language you two have built playing together, does it now take another step forward? Because now you're doing something that's not familiar to both of you, and you got to find your new way to communicate with each other in this project. And just how does that look?
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I think usually when Jason and I have worked in the past, we've kind of tackled all things as a whole. Music, vocals, lyrics, melody, all of it. I think one thing that was kind of helpful with this project with Love and Death was, we also had another person, another co-producer, Joe Rickard, who produced my last album, and he was also heavily involved in this Love and Death record. And so I had just gotten done recording my album with Joe. So I was working a lot with Joe per se, as opposed with Jason. I mean, Jason was, we were all, we're all just great friends, best friends. But me and Joe really did a lot of stuff. And Joe, for example, lots of times we wouldn't even know if a song was going to happen or be recorded. Joe would just kind of come up with some music and he would send it to me. And then I would just come up with melody and lyrics, the top line. And I would sing basically a verse and a chorus. And we would basically take that idea and then we would send that to Head and Jason. And they would either be like, we love this, or let's try something else. And so that's just kind of what happened. And we just kind of, we got I don't know, 4 or 5, I forget how many songs on the record, but it was 4 or 5 good ones where, we kind of did it that way. And then Jason will take that music and just, massage it and pump it up with steroids and change a little, add some things here and there. He does what he does. And he's just great. Just all around, just an incredible writer's mind. And so, so that's kind of how it all, came about. And then obviously Head would come in and add just his, amazingness, lyrics and screams and vocals, So many people I feel like have just been sleeping on his voice, because I think the whole Love and Death thing, they're not thinking of him as a vocalist, but man, his voice sounds so cool, and the screams are so cool. So it was a really great project to be involved with.
Are you someone who, I mean, given the stature of some of the bands you tour with in Breaking Ben, I mean, looking at like, we'll use like the Bush tour you guys did. Was it last year? I think you guys did. I know I saw it. I just can't remember when it was.
Yeah.
But are you someone that likes to pick the brains of people and just kind of see like how they work, or try to get information from them to try to grow your bag of tools that you can pull from?
You mean from like touring with different bands like Bush?
Sure. Or just like people in general, like people you encounter in general.
Yeah. Somewhat. I guess somewhat. It takes me a while to kind of muster up enough courage to talk to people. Usually, I for the most part, I feel like on tour, I'm just kind of like just awkward, just like I'm just out there. You know, I'm thinking about the show. I'm thinking about what my tasks are and what I have to do. And, you know, there's a little bit of, meeting and stuff, but I don't know. I don't go too much out of my way to be like, hey, I'm Keith. I'm kind of just like, hey, what's up? Nice to meet you. If we happen to run into each other or whatever. So, but I think, usually it's kind of like, often it happens like the very last day of tour. Like, oh, hey man, nice to meet you finally. It's been an amazing tour, That's how it usually goes down. But as far as like really kind of dissecting people and picking their brain, and I mean, obviously, a lot of these bands that we've toured with, they're successful, and they've done some really great things, and they've done important things to kind of make themselves successful. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to learn always. I think there's, the minute you stop learning, it's just you're in a bad spot. So I try to just, watch from afar and not really kind of pry too much into the ins and outs and the details. But definitely a lot of things worth paying attention to and following, and lots of respect for sure.
I think that's like having worked door at a bar for a little while. I think that's always like the thing that I notice about people seemingly is that like those that kind of like to lay in the back and just kind of observe everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it's because they're more introverted than extroverted. Sometimes I think it's because some people, and I think I'm more in this boat where it's like I am a very outward going person, but sometimes I just like to sit back and watch, because it's interesting when people don't realize they're being watched necessarily, what it reveals about the people. And so I feel like touring in such a microcosm of it itself, I think is a lot of hurry up and wait. So I feel like it'd be hard not to kind of want to look at what someone's doing, especially, and we'll just use Bush for the example, where it's like, okay, this is a band that's been doing this for X amount of time.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be interesting to talk to them. I noticed they do these things. How much of their success, how much of what they are doing is because it's a thing they've figured out. It's like the 10,000 hours put in, or if it's just something else. And what is it? And going from there and just kind of like learning more about the people.
Yeah, I think, fill in the blank with whatever successful band you can think of. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I mean, obviously talent, hard work, luck. A lot of people they say, what is it? Success is when opportunity meets preparation or whatever. I don't know, but something like that. But it's kind of like you work hard to set yourself up to be lucky, and I think all those things kind of factor in. And I've been lucky. I've been incredibly lucky. But one thing I think that kind of helps me is that I'm persistent as fuck. And I don't take no for an answer. And I just keep working and I keep my head down and I work away. And I think that kind of helps me for whatever, any kind of talent deficiencies I might have. I work my ass off. And so, yeah. I think a lot of those bands they share in that. I think they you got to work hard for sure, and talent that's a big one. I mean, Bush is incredibly talented. I mean, Gavin is such an incredible, frontman vocalist, and he has been for many years. And so there's lots to be learned there for sure.
Kind of speaking to thinking of people being a certain thing or filling a certain role, seeing that tour that you guys did, it was really weird, and it took me probably about at least a couple of days after the show, because what kind of fucked me up was seeing Gavin not play guitar most of the set, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you play guitar and you sing, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And to see him not do that and literally running around the arena, I was like, wow, okay, I guess I have to look at you now as a traditional frontman doing this and doing a really good job of doing it and sounding great. It was just very weird for me to be like, I know you as this person, this is what you do, and you're not doing that anymore. And you're not doing that now 20, 25 years into a career. Like, that's very weird to kind of have that change and that separation of what you're known for. But I think ultimately it's good and kind of allows you to the growth we're kind of talking about. I had another thought, but I just kind of lost it in trying to think about making the correlation of Gavin being someone that I'm not used to seeing him being. What was I going to say? Totally blanked on that.
To me, to add on to that, to me, I'm and I don't want to speak for Gavin, but there are songs that, I'm kind of the same thing in a way with like the whole guitar player thing. I play guitar and sing. But man, I got to tell you, there's times where I'm just dying to put the guitar down so I could just be a front man and just sing and not have to worry about playing guitar. Yeah, because it's kind of like another thing to flip out on your Swiss Army knife. Okay, I can do this too. This is maybe catching those people that are like so used to just a front man being a front man and being a vocalist. So it's like, okay, I'm scratching that itch for those fans that are kind of looking for that. And then of course, the guitar player singer dude, I think that's kind of more my comfort zone. And for all I know, and for all we know, maybe Gavin's been dying to be able to just run around the arena for years and not worry about playing guitar for at least a couple songs. So that's how I look at it. I know that there's definitely times where I'm just like, can I not play guitar on this song? So I can just like rock out and sing and jump on the bar or whatever, So
it's fun. It's funny to hear you say that, because I feel like a lot of people, very famously, one of my favorite bands that I've loved for forever, the band Him, their singer notoriously, when the band started, played bass, writes all the stuff for them basically. Yeah. And he was talking about how when he wasn't playing bass and it didn't have anything, he's like, I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I just started chain smoking and stuff like that. That it's like you have to kind of find this new way to perform songs that you're used to performing, because now that, and you can call it a crutch, you can call it whatever, but it's like, I'm used to this thing being between me and the audience, and now it's just me, and that's so vulnerable and so weird. So to hear you say like you kind of want that and actually relish stepping into that, I think is really interesting, because usually you don't hear people say that. It's always I feel so naked without the thing that I'm used to having, like a barrier
there's
between
definitely
us.
that. Yeah, there's definither that too. The whole not knowing what to do with your hands is a real fucking thing, for sure. But then lots of times where I find, if I'm playing guitar, I'll have a boom stand, like a mic stand that has like kind of the angle, But if I wasn't playing guitar, I would want just a straight stand to just like hold and maybe pick up the stand and whatever, Right. So it's just like even that, you're like looking for something to hold on to for dear life. But yeah, that's part of it. You don't know what to do. You're kind of like, what am I doing with my hands? Do I just walk around or, and so now the more and more I do it, you just kind of have to kind of just let go and just flow with the music and just sing, man. And not even worry about what your hands are. Let your hands just do what they would do naturally. I don't know. Some jazz hands. Sing with some jazz hands.
I remember the thing I was going to ask that was going to be a segue. So I was thinking, since the last record that you've done solo, TikTok has become a bigger thing, different ways for your music to kind of catch and have to be present on to get it everywhere. Yeah. This is something that's probably newer for you. Maybe not because of maybe having to integrate some of that in the Breaking Benjamin world. I don't know. But how have you found that to traverse now, like for your solo stuff?
Yeah, that's a whole bag of worms. I think that's something that I'm not, and I'm definitely not the only musician that's you know, like it or not, being forced to kind of, you know, hop on the TikTok train. But you know, that's just it. You know, and you know, I'm sure, who knows? This isn't the first time that the music industry and what we're all supposed to do as musicians is going to change. I'm sure there's going to be some other thing that we're going to have to learn how to do. I don't know. We'll have to learn how to hologram ourselves and then make that hologram dance on something. So I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? But you know, I think it's a mistake not to embrace technology, not to embrace the new things. Gosh, especially something like TikTok that's just, you know, everybody is on now. And I think, you know, you can just kind of make it your own. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. I mean, and I do have a TikTok. It's kind of sad right now, but there's a few videos on there. But yeah, Keith Talk, hashtag Keith Talk.
It's funny because like my wife has it, and I got one for the show because I was like, everyone was like, you need it, and I was like, do I don't know. I was like, everyone was like, you need it, you need Vero, you need, like, when all the new things have been popping up in the last handful of years, and everyone's like, you gotta be there, and I'm like, do I don't know, because like, and I still come back to the thing of like, you know, there's someone like my wife who I know is like on the app pretty constantly, but is not really ever actually engaging in anything. Like she'll share things with friends and all that kind of stuff, or even show me stuff, but I don't ever see her actively like using the platform. Right. And to me, I feel like I'm seeing more people doing that, and that always keeps, when trying to figure out how best to navigate how we find an audience and how we communicate with it, I always come back to, because, you know, everyone's like, you got to create reels, you got to do all this stuff, you got to hashtag, and all the things we constantly get browbeaten into quote unquote having to do.
Sure. And
I always challenge people, you know, like when I started doing the TikTok thing, I go, oh, it's crazy. Like the thing I threw up got like 1,200 views in a day. But then I'll go look at the podcast episode that it's correlated to, and it's not done anything. So I then come to the idea of, well, then other than a waste of my time of creating this content to put it somewhere else, and now taking even more time to be online, to be everywhere and nowhere at once, if it doesn't get you to listen to the thing, then ultimately what was the point? I still come back to that because I feel like it's a step further and harder than at least a song, where at least someone can take your song and just throw it in the background of whatever they're doing. No one's going to do that with my podcast clip. Sure. And be like, oh, I'm creating a reel or whatever the fuck to this podcast clip. Like, I just don't see that happening. But it's a thing where I just wonder, what is it like for you? Because again, going back to the same thing, that you're a little bit older than me, and now you're having to possibly traverse this landscape in two different folds as an established band that has, you know, X amount of fans and might be seeking you out just because of that. But then also now the flip side of that of, I'm a newer up and coming solo artist, and I have to really be everywhere for everyone to find my music. And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. You know, I would say, you know, no two people are the same with how they engage online. And it's hard to, I would say, make a decision on a whole social media platform based on just people that we might know in our inner circle. You know, guys, there's so much stuff happening, you know, and so many, you know, so many young people that are on there. You know, obviously that's something we all want to, you know, try to tap into that market and just like have a younger crowd, a younger audience. Because I mean, they're the future. I mean, obviously it bodes well for whatever project you do. But yeah, it's a tough thing. You think about, you're saying like, what's the point? It's like they're engaging, or they're I know that they're watching this little thing. It's like going to the grocery store and someone is, you ever been and they have like the little hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, well, it's like, here's all these little hors d'oeuvres. It's like, do you want to take a bite of this hors d'oeuvre, or do you want to just like jot down the recipe, go home and make the full meal yourself? But it's like right there to just pick up with a toothpick and eat it. And it's up to the person to say, hey, I want to do this. And unfortunately, that's just the world we're living with, now. It's like, even if something that is that you're really interested in. I was having this conversation with someone the other day. Say you decide that, you know what, I really like this band. I want to learn more about them. You have to kind of almost decide and really work to seek them out and to seek out their stuff. Because even if they're getting played and you're running across all these videos and stuff accidentally, unless you're really just kind of looking for it, it can easily just be passed over and not cared about. And that just goes to show, it's just like there's so much just stuff being thrown at us all the time. It's hard to decide, what am I going to put my time into? Does this really interest me enough to go seek it out and to go, make those 3 extra clicks, as sad as that sounds. You're like, man, that's not a lot of work at all. But, when there's so much stuff happening, time is everything. It's you got to keep people's attention. I was going to make another point with this, but I kind of lost it.
No worries, man. I mean, it's kind of funny, like how that will happen. Like, I think me forgetting the thing that we just kind of got on to, I guess one of the first times I've just straight forgotten something like that I had like right at the top of my head, where I was like, I got it. No, I don't have that anymore. And then I had nothing to back it up with. Usually I'm not usually at a loss for words. So that's kind of the first time in a very long time that's happened.
It happens in our seasoned age, my guy.
Yeah.
And also, plus, I'm not sure if I answered that question right. I kind of, you just got to say TikTok, and I'll go on a tangent about it. But it's a crazy thing, it's a crazy, and then obviously with just like the algorithms and stuff, if you don't, it's crazy to me to think about, like, if you don't post correctly, you'll get penalized for stuff. It's just like, what happened to just posting something? But if you don't post correctly with the right thing at the right time, with the right hashtag, with the right amount of, it's just like, God, there's so many hoops and so many hats that we have to wear. It takes it away. What about like the time I could have been spending writing a potential #1 song? Who knows? But instead, I have to film myself, doing a hashtag challenge.
I was the guest I just had on that I put out this week. He hit me up and was like, "What's the best way for you to put this out for like the algorithms and all that stuff?" And I was like, dude, I don't know anymore. I was like, I go, you even sharing it will be better than nothing. And I was like, but I mean, I go, again, this is where it kind of correlates from my side of this to more of like, being a musician side of things. Yeah. But when I was telling this person, I was like, okay, so let's say you share the story and I have an iTunes, like the iTunes link.
Yeah.
Someone inevitably is going to complain and be like, well, I don't use iTunes. And it's like, all right, man, I'm not creating a separate link for every place that you can find this show. I'm not going to do that. Like I wouldn't do that if I was putting a song in. I'm not going to be like, well, here's the Spotify version. Okay, now here's the iTunes version. Here's the, whatever, SoundCloud. Like, I'm not going to do that. But I feel like that's sort of the environment we've found ourselves in, where everyone's like, if it's not literally spoon-fed to me on that hors d'oeuvre pick, then I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And you're just like...
That's kind of what I'm saying. If that's in hopes to get kind of, people just off the surface, but I think the people that are really genuinely interested and really just want to know more and want to, they're compelled to see it. They will take whatever extra steps they need to do to get it. But I think, this kind of speaks for myself on this. My main goal at this point is not even so much to get them to make those extra clicks, but at least just let people know that I fucking exist. Because there's just so much stuff, man. There's so much stuff, and there's only so much attention to grab, because it's all being used by a whole lot of different things. I remember what I was going to say. We're not just competing with, and I hate to say that it's a competition at all, because it's not. But
kind of is.
we kind of are competing for people's attention, and it's not just entertainment. It's not just music. In the world of TikTok, we're competing with Denise's, cooking corner. You know what I mean? Who lives up the block and she's blowing up on TikTok. It's like a lot of people are watching that. You gotta try to get some of the attention from, those people. Everybody's got a fan base, and it's a lot to compete with. I don't know if I made that point correctly, but I don't know.
Oh, I mean, you did, and I think it's actually, and this is why I love kind of being more spontaneous in the conversation, because it allows for weird synchronicities to happen like this. Yeah. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a lot of times when I hear something I like or that makes me want to think like a little bit more and dive deeper into something, I'll jot it down. And so the other day I wrote this question that someone on a podcast posed to everybody in their conversation, but he goes, why do we all assume we have an audience? And that really fucking stuck with me, because I was like, why do we all assume we have one? And are we deserving of it? Is the other part that I've been really expounding upon internally on that thought. And it's interesting because going back a handful of years, I remember my dad making a comment to me about this show and was just like, what are you going to do with your platform, or what do you want your voice to be? And I was like, what do you mean my platform? Yeah. He's like, yeah, your show. And I was like, I don't know, I just talk to people. That's not a platform. And then he's like, but you are putting out ideas and things that you and this person have talked about that people are going to hear. And then, that is a platform. You do probably should be aware of that and be aware of what you're putting out there. And I never really thought about it, but it was interesting to kind of think about that. And then when I, like I said, jotted down this question, I've really been kind of thinking about it, because I think it's great that we live in a world where everyone has a voice that they can use. But I also think that that's sort of the problem too, is not everyone should have one. Yeah. And I often think about that for as far as like myself. I'm like, does anyone care? No, there's a lot of things I'll say or get ready to do, and I'm like, does anyone even care? Who cares? Yeah. I think that's there's ups and downs with this whole thing, man. This whole being a musician thing. I mean, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of things to work through mentally. I mean, it is a real journey some days. But that's just part of it, I think, do any of us really have an audience? I definitely think people do. Whether or not I have an audience or not, I think I have. There's maybe a few. I often say I'll write something, like, thank you guys. I mean, I wrote a little thing the other day, and I was just feeling really grateful. I try to live in gratitude. And because, I mean, I really am grateful to be here, and really just grateful to be doing this. And I know that I didn't get here and have this opportunity by myself. It takes an army of people that do care and do listen and support. So I wrote a little thing. I'm just kind of like, hey, thank you guys so much for your support. I love you all, to whoever that reached. I mean, it could have been one person just coming back with, you're welcome, but to me, I mean, at least that's one person that's an audience, and that does care. So obviously, who knows how many? It'd be great if it was a million one day. But however many there are at the moment, I do appreciate them. It's like Bjork said, or she didn't really say, but it was just the name of a title, but one of her songs, but Army of One.
Yeah, there's a lot of days where it feels like that. But I think to be where I'm at, it takes a whole lot of people Gosh, I know that even just my close circle of people that help me, like my manager, Jerome, my God, dude, I don't think I wouldn't be able to do this without him. And I mean, he just, and he happens to just be the greatest, like the greatest manager / tour manager. I mean, just the GOAT. So he does so many things behind the scenes for me, even just little things that just help. And it's a tough job, but he's great at it. And I think anybody that is a manager in this business, there's a lot of things that you're doing for an artist. An artist has to deal with like just their mental facilities and health, and because some days, man, that you don't get a win. You don't get wins sometimes. No. And so all we can do is just try to make it through to the next win. So
yeah, I think there's a lot to be. And it's funny, like one of my old jobs was running the front end of Sam's Club, and a lot of their stupid things they browbeat into you, their sayings. But it's funny, as I've gotten older, like one of them I still latch on to quite a bit. But it's like, because I think a lot of us, it's easier, and therapy also taught me this, of thinking of something from a more positive mindset from the outset versus dwelling on a negative and then just focusing on that the whole time. It's crazy how even just that little minute shift in perspective will actually make you be a lot more happier in most of your day-to-day things. But
that's good.
They talk about, like, at Sam's Club, their whole thing isn't like that you failed. It was that it was an area of opportunity. So I've always taken that same thing where it's like, this wasn't a failure. This was an area for me to learn something, whatever it is. I just have to be willing to take in whatever that new lesson is versus looking at it more, again, negatively, like, oh, this didn't pan out. I failed. Like, ugh. Yeah. It's like, no, like, what can you take from this to be better for the next time? And then move forward accordingly.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in, I think lots of times, more oftentimes than not, you learn more from losing than winning. Yeah. If anything, just to deal with your own, thoughts and, how to motivate yourself to come back out of that. You really learn about yourself and just how ultimately strong you can be. So, I think there's lots of positives to come from it. And plus, especially if that from the onset, you're trying something new sometimes, or you're putting yourself in out of your comfort zone. And I mean, if it doesn't go well, then hey, you tried it. You got to learn and just try to reload and give it another shot. But yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for putting yourself out of your comfort zone and trying to get out there. Much respect to anybody that does that, that just, decides to change their job, their field, or anything, just following their gut and their heart and going for stuff. I mean, being a musician, I mean, that's one of those things where, I oftentimes joke that it's like being a professional gambler. This whole thing is one big fucking risk, and everybody talks about plan A and plan B. I mean, and I had a plan B. My parents were like, hey, we support you with what you want to do. Obviously it's like you walk in the room, you're like, I want to be a musician, guys. And, your parents are just like, shit. All right. Well, that's great, but what's your plan B? So I think my plan B was like, well, go to college, get a degree, and, and then you can go for it, so, and I did that. But my mindset throughout the plan B was plan A. So I think that you got to just got to go for it. But yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent again.
No, I mean, that's the whole point of a podcast, first and foremost. But I was going to say, it sounds like, and again, this is it's so funny. Like, sometimes I feel like those that may listen to the show are like, you keep saying these same things, but it's like the guest is never usually the same. So me repeating myself is the first time this person, whoever I'm talking to, is going to hear it. And I think it bears repeating sometimes, but I think, for a while coming out of the pandemic for me, like, I kind of lost my why of doing the show. Like the numbers got cut in half basically, and it just became this thing where I was like I focused on all the negatives for everything, and then I just happened to do 2 really good literally in the same day back-to-back conversations, and I was like, oh, there it is. There's my why. This is why I love doing this. It's not for anyone else. I do it for me. It gives me something every time I do it. And I forgot that. I lost sight of that. And since refinding the why, I think, I've gone in with more focused intent behind like who I want to have on, like not just doing shit because it's just somebody to have on just to fill in a space, but it's like, I want to talk to this person. There's something about the person that I find interesting and want to ask certain questions to, even though I've not written them down. But and to me, I usually walk away thinking about something that we've discussed. So for me, it's like that was my why, and I feel like
that's great.
I think everyone kind of needs to find that, because at the end of the day, if you're doing it for anything other than yourself, then you're going to be disappointed at some point, because it's not going to be enough to sustain and keep you through the hard times.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you said it. And especially, with this solo stuff for me, I mean, it's a fucking grind. I mean, it is hard. It is hard. I'm sure there's people out there, they're like, oh, whatever. He plays guitar in Breaking Benjamin. They're just going to open the door. They're going to roll the fucking red carpet out for him and shit. No. And I wouldn't want that anyway. I mean, whatever kind of success or anything, whatever it happens with this solo endeavor, I want it to be on its own merit. I don't want it to be like I'm riding any coattails or anything like that. And I've always been like that from the beginning. I think lots of times promoters will want to be, let's say, Keith Wallen of Breaking Benjamin on the ad mat, and I'm just like, do what you want to do, but I don't want that shit, like I'd rather it just be a completely separate entity, but I get it. It's part of my life. It's part of me. And, so, and I get the whole marketing part of it, but it's a different thing,
It's literally something. When I used to book shows many, many years ago, I was doing a Deftones tribute show, and one of the friends that I was having do it was from this band Still Remains. They're from around here. They used to be signed to Roadrunner and had a name back in the day. And I remember the venue, because it was the first time I was doing something at a venue, not just at my house or a small like VFW type thing.
Yeah.
And the venue was like, you should put featuring members of this band. And I was like, but that band has nothing to do with this show, has nothing to do with Deftones songs, has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And they're like, but it's going to get people in the door. And I was like, is it? Like, in parentheses on in the tiniest font that's probably like an 8 or smaller, is it really going to matter that I put featuring members of Still Remains? And then the fucking irony of it all was, they ended up having me do it. And I remember getting into a conversation with my friend that is the vocalist of that band and of the project that we were doing. Yeah. And he was like, well, if you're going to do that, then, we're going to need a little bit more money. And I was like,
right.
And, and I agreed with everything he was saying, because he's like, you are using a name that I built based on me not being home for family, for friends, for eating shit, literally and figuratively, of financially not making dick for, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, yep, I totally understand, and you're right. And it was a thing where it really kind of got into an interesting conversation of what is a name worth? What is your value? And then, again, interesting way to bring this back up, but a handful of years ago, I read a book about the making of the Wu-Tang record that they sold to Martin Shkreli for like $1 million or whatever. And the whole part of the title of the book is devaluing music and the devaluing of art. And to kind of break it down real quickly, RZA and this other producer that he was working with kept trying to figure out, why does a painting go for millions of dollars? Why do these things go for so much? But music, people steal it. It's only worth $10 or whatever. And they kind of came to the realization that it's a one of one. And so what if they were to do that with music, made it a one of one? Mm-hmm. Does it add more value to the same thing that you would have made anyway? Because now there's exclusivity. It's the supply and demand and all this other marketing terms and so forth. Yeah. It was just really interesting to kind of get in the weeds on that, because I feel like and I think that to kind of boil it down, one of the most interesting things is when they were making the music and everyone's like, oh, like fans were pissed because we're not going to get to hear it, and we got you to this level where you can do this and so on and so forth. They felt some ownership of the group and the artists, and that's rightfully so. Right. And so they put out music, and I think I might have the lower tier wrong, but I want to say it was like 25, or maybe it was even like, I think it was 25, 50, and 100. And you got like 2 songs at each tier. Mm-hmm. As of when the book had come out, the $50 and the $100 tiered songs never got leaked, but the $25 ones did. So they had learned, even in the process of figuring out and proof of concepting this thing, that they were like, so at $25, people are willing to just throw that away, what they spent their money on, and just throw it away. But somehow $50 and more, people are like, oh, I'm not giving that away to people.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting to kind of break that down as to how we value ourselves. And then even on my other show, one of my co-hosts is a tattoo artist, so we started talking about the value of yourself, understanding what you're worth, and then in some instances, if your profession is this, charging accordingly, changing your rates to reflect your value to yourself and to others. And I think it's a really interesting thing to start breaking down, but I could see it kind of working against you in this capacity, where people are like, oh, well, you just get everything fucking handed to you, and you're like, no, I still have to earn everything, man.
Oh yeah. Oh, and not only that, I mean, it's wild how in some cases you can almost be hidden in plain sight with it. I've got some shows coming up here in May where it's Breaking Benjamin, Daughtry, and then I'm opening. I'm opening, and I've done that before.
Have you done that before? Have you? Okay.
Yes, with some of the acoustic tours, but this is the first one where I'm playing. Well, not the first one, but first group of shows where it's going to be my full band. It's like me and my backing band. But we released the ad mat and the flyer, and it's so funny. I would see people; they'd be like, so stoked to see Breaking Benjamin and Daughtry, and I'm just like, did you not see, like, I'm on there too? And it's just like, man, that sucks. Like, how can I be there and not be there? But, it's just the nature of the beast that sometimes granted, those are 2 names that are much more well-known. Sure. And it's kind of like going back to what I said earlier, it could be right in front of someone's face. And if they're not looking for it, they won't see it. Even if it's just right there, they won't see it. So, it's just a matter of exposure. I totally get that. But another thing I was going to tell you about, and this is kind of funny, some of the shows, that would say, featuring, Keith Wallen of Breaking Benjamin, the inevitable comment will be, oh, are you playing any Breaking Benjamin songs? And I'm like, no, I'm fucking not, I'm not. This is not Breaking Benjamin. This is Keith Wallen. I'm playing my songs. But now what's funny is, at Breaking Benjamin will announce a tour, and now there's been a couple times where people be like, "You playing any solo show or any solo songs on this tour?" So, and of course I'm just like, "No, but man, that'd be awesome." I'm like excited about it because I'm like, "Wow, it switched for a second," Yeah. But I'm firmly all about the separation. I'm not trying to dilute the brand of Breaking Benjamin in any way or anything like that. And another common misconception too, I want to just throw this out there real fast, is that the fans have been waiting a long time for a new Breaking Benjamin album. My solo efforts and endeavors are in no way delaying.
No, don't. Come on now. You can't spread that kind of bullshit.
It's in no way delaying any of that.
It's so funny, like, even that, like, so one of my kind of going back years ago when I used to book shows, there was a band that I had booked. They had some van problems, decided to go back home just to cut their losses, and went back home. Sure. And I stayed in contact with that person, and he's become a really good friend over the years. But it's funny because, like, now he is he's a guitar player for Dance Gavin Dance, and it's been funny to see his career, because I feel like, as you were just kind of saying, like, people are like, oh, are you going to play any of this stuff? Or now they're kind of coming around the other way, like, hey, are you going to do any solo stuff? So his other band that I had booked, Idola, like, they're kind of starting to take off now in the last couple of years. And they've kind of been doing that thing where sometimes Idola will open on a Dance Gavin run and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really been interesting to see how it's taken almost 10 years, but it's like that band is now starting, like, I mean, Dance Gavin's way up here, like this band's kind of like down here, but they're starting the ascension where people are excited about that record, and you don't see the Dance Gavin comments anymore. And
that's
I remember going to see one of the first time I ever got to see the band, and I've been into this band for, like I said, almost 10 years.
Sure.
And the first time getting to see them was when my wife and I went to Atlanta, and we were watching them play like a headlining run. And I remember just smiling, and my wife was like, what are you smiling at? Like kind of laughing, smiling. She was like, what's going on? Trying to look at what I'm looking at. And I go, this is a dude who, like, I love this band and I love what he does in this band. Yeah. And like no one for the longest time really knew about this. Right. And so it's crazy that I'm in a probably 500-600 cap room that's mostly filled, and people are here for this band. They're here for him. Yeah. And I get to watch him do the thing that I love him doing. And I go, and it's not to take away from the other thing that he does, but there's something more rewarding about it when you're a fan of that person and knowing, like, all the things to get it to that level. And it's just like, it's so fucking cool when you get to see that. And I know it probably just has to mean more. Like we were saying earlier, like, it just has to mean more to you. Like, that it's not this other thing that is getting you there. It's the fruits, it's the hard work, it's the songs, it's literally everything coming together and making people want to support this thing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to really say, I mean, obviously there's some times where I'm just like, God, I just want this to do this, and I want this other thing to do this, it's hard to say one way or the other. But I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean, that's the goal is to try to, kind of get to that level where, I think a lot of it comes from this also, look, Breaking Ben's been around a long time. I don't think Ben is planning on doing this anytime soon, but if Ben one day woke up and was just like, I'm good, see you guys, good luck. I want to be able to just at least have some kind of outlet and be able to still play shows and tour and stuff. So that's another motivating factor.
Well, I think it also is more to the point of what you said probably 10, 15 minutes ago. It's inadvertently your plan B, but it's still part of your plan A.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, yeah. I don't even like plan B. It's just two plan A's.
A and A.5.
Exactly.
Kind of, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I've been enjoying talking with you. Obviously you got a bunch of shows coming up, solo runs and all that kind of stuff. What's, with the record coming out, by the time this episode will come out, I think it'll kind of line up perfectly for the record coming out. What are you looking forward to people hearing that they haven't gotten to hear yet?
That's a good question. I wish I could say just like this song without a doubt, but I feel like, I don't want to, and I don't want to give just like a coach speak generalized answer. But there's a few songs, I did a few songs that, I don't know. There's a couple songs that aren't on the record, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure when or if. I mean, surely they'll be coming out at some point, but I don't know whether it's going to be a deluxe or whether it's just going to be a separate thing down the road. But there's one song that I did that I really love, and then as far as like the record goes, there's a couple. There's a song I have called "Don't Fall Asleep." That and it's one of those songs that I kind of worked on here in my basement before I even went to record, or, you know, before any kind of writing sessions or anything like that. And I just kind of had this idea, and it kind of like organically kind of grew. And so I'm stoked about that one. I was really pumped about how the chorus and just how it turned out. But I would just say just the whole album as a whole, you know, as I sink back into coach speak here. I'm excited for everybody to hear all the songs and gravitate to whatever song that they gravitate to. And I'm really curious to see which ones they are and why. And, you know, cause I feel like there's a whole gamut of things in there, and it's all basically based off of for the most part, it's all based off of an ayahuasca trip that I had. Yeah, a few years back. Lots of things that I just encountered and saw in this like spiritual, mental, psychedelic journey that I went on. A lot of these songs kind of harken back to just some of those feelings and some things that I experienced and saw. And so, yeah.
Well, now okay. It's
don't
funny
do drugs, kids. I don't.
So first of all, I almost thought you were gonna, because it's not a single, so not yet anyway. It might be one of the last like singles before the record comes out. But I almost would have expected maybe Dear Father to be kind of the one you would pick to be like, I'm interested to have people hear this one.
Yeah, I played that one actually in December. I had an acoustic show and I debuted it there and played it, and surprisingly somehow I made it through it. But that one definitely is one that I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on it. You know, obviously it's a song dealing with death, and you know, I think more specifically, you know, the death of my father, and we all want to believe that, you know, some of our loved ones that have gone are still able to kind of keep an eye on us, and you know, you wonder like, man, can they see me now? Can they see just what all I've accomplished in my life? And you want to hold that hope that they can. And so that was my song to Dad, you know. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people can maybe relate, and maybe just really kind of think about, like, you know, hoping that there is that still kind of line of communication, even though we don't know for sure.
So the other thing too, because I feel like I'd be a little remiss, because I advocate for experimenting to get outside of yourself to learn more about who you are when you kind of have to get forced to. So for me, I think psychedelics are always a really good thing to do that. And there's the drummer from Stray from the Path, Craig Reynolds. He has a really great podcast as well. He had a tweet a long time ago that when people ask, like, why do you venture into these things? And I go, here's a great example of why.
Yeah.
And again, finding your why. But he was saying, sometimes I think a lot of people need to be a passenger in their lives versus being behind the wheel all the time. And
that's great.
I think I've done, you know, mushrooms, acid, and I haven't done ayahuasca yet, but it's like on my bucket list of sorts. But I just kind of, and it's not that I'd like the feeling of not being in control. I love that if I'm thinking of something, or maybe there's something I just haven't tackled, it kind of puts it on Front Street and kind of makes you deal with it. And to me, I kind of love that idea, because I think so much of our lives we hide from things, and we don't want to get into the, like, maybe you're not feeling great about yourself or something, and you know why, but you're just pushing it back. And sometimes I think doing these things really kind of brings those things to the forefront where you have to deal with them and work your way through it. And I think for me, having gone through therapy, having like those tools to kind of also work through things that I'm going through under the influence of these things is great. But another thing that it's kind of taught me is to kind of it really puts me in the present. It really makes me focused on, oddly, people's energy, which I've been more leaning into a lot more of trusting that. And just
that's
kind of
thing.
experience. Yeah, no, it it's revealed itself to me to be a thing. I used to think it was kind of a thing, and then the last couple of like especially the last acid trip and the last mushroom trip that I did really revealed that to me, and I was like, all right, I really need to lean into that and focus on that a lot more.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it I think it is, and some people might say, I mean, it's a form of therapy. You know, you kind of deal. I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, you're forced to kind of deal with things that, emotions or trauma or whatever, that are repressed in some way, and you know, kind of back in there, and it brings it to the surface. But yeah, I really came out of that experience. I felt like there was a before ayahuasca Keith and an after ayahuasca Keith, and you know, and even the week after, I still felt like I had one foot in the spirit realm. It was a journey for sure. I mean, Dear Father. I mean, that song is absolutely. There's a line in the song where you know, I still see your face, a silhouette through time and space. You know, there was this thing that I saw during the trip where I just, you know, I saw this light at the, you know, in this complete blackness, but there was a light in front of me. You know, you'd say the cliche light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, but it really was, and it was blinking, and I'm like, why is that light blinking in my face? And then I slowly noticed that it wasn't blinking per se on its own. It was people that were walking in front of the light past it, and it was causing it to flash. And then one of those people, one of those shadows, it was just a silhouette. One of them stopped in front of the light and then came toward me and kind of stood between me and the light. And it was just like this golden outline on this silhouette. And I just remember thinking, damn, I'm glad I took this shit. I'm glad I took this, because like I felt just like an overwhelming just wave of euphoria and gratitude that, you know, I wouldn't have seen this. I wouldn't have experienced it. I mean, I literally was just like, this is my father in front of me, found me through time and space and through this thing, you know? And so, yeah, and that's kind of like what the song was talking about. But it was very profound for me. I'm sure, you know, everybody's journey, and it's all their own, you know. Yeah. I was told, you know, it was me and a group of people, and you're not supposed to interact with anyone else. You know, it's like your own kind of thing. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's always funny. The last, like, so coincidentally, when I did my acid trip, the first time I've ever really done it to the level that I did, I was supposed to do a podcast with my friend Porter from Atreyu, and he was like, I was like, yeah, I could do it on this day. I was going to take an acid trip, but like, whatever, I can do it like the next day. He goes, no. Let's do it the next day. Let's do the podcast the next day, and you can tell me about it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to not even 24 hours removed. Like, I think technically, I was still kind of in it a little bit.
Oh yeah.
At one point, I had a hard time sleeping, and then I had this fucked up thought where I was like, what if I am sleeping, but my dream, my unconscious state is like in a state of unrest, and so the sleep I'm getting is not great because I'm thinking about how I can't fall asleep, but I'm actually sleeping right now. And then he was like, that's fucked up. And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I had that thought, and then I was like, oh no, what if this is just the realm I stay in now? Like, I will never be able to fall asleep, and I'll just perpetually be like every couple hours, like, oh, I almost fell asleep. I don't know. It's very weird when you start getting into that stuff too, and you're just like, ugh.
Oh yeah. And plus, just, you know, the whole, just, you know, some people like the loss of control. I don't. I want to remain in control 100%. So for me to take something like that is not like me. I've dabbled in shrooms a little bit. I've never done acid just because I'm like, I know I'm going to have a bad trip and there'll be skulls flying at me or whatever. So I'm just like, nah, I'm good. And it's just, I don't know. The whole man-made freaks me out. So, but I still don't even know why I did it. It was one of those things where I was like, this is an opportunity. And it's like what you said earlier. Here's an opportunity that I could learn from. So I took it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I'm very excited to eventually do it and just see what it's like. I mean, too many people I know that have actually, and thank you for being more forthcoming with it, because I know it's some people are a little trepidatious in revealing those things because of obviously what people may think it is, where it's just like, oh, you're getting fucked up on drugs, and it's like, sort of, but it's also bigger than that. And I think that's sort of still the stigmatization of it, I think, is still, people got to get over it, but ultimately you got to do whatever you're going to do for you. So to me, like, to hear those that do it, I think everyone that I know that has talked about it on the show talks about it with respect, and they don't take it lightly, and it's usually with a guided person helping you through it. But I think everyone that has done it comes out with something pretty profound that they've learned on the other end. And to me, it's like, how would you not want to do that and just see what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, does it make you, fucked up per se? Yeah, for sure. But all the people that relegate that to just, recreationally getting fucked up and that's all it is, they're just wrong. They're just wrong. There's so much more to it. I mean, they primarily I think that, it's a South American rainforest kind of thing. You have a shaman, they call it medicine, it's a therapy medicine session, and it's a really lots of ways and lots of times a helpful thing, to deal with past trauma and all this regressed stuff. So I don't know. People are just very set in their ways and closed-minded. And I mean, it's been that way since the beginning of time. It will, it will still be that way long after we're gone. But I don't know. You got to hope that humans can evolve to be open-minded and love each other. And I don't know. I watch a lot of science fiction, and you see these futuristic ideals of what the human race is going to be like, and you're just like, man, that's pretty cool. But I mean, it's still, it's still like Star Wars and Star Trek. There's still lasers and battles and shit, so they're still fighting all kinds of stuff. So, and then I guess it's not that peaceful. I don't know. I'm really going on a tangent now.
No, you're good. I was to say, meanwhile, my brain goes to like Event Horizon, where it's like you find the gateway to hell.
Exactly. Then there's future looks bright, doesn't it? Yeah.
Nope. Future's out to kill us all.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can everyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
That's a great question. So I probably do the majority of my stuff on Instagram, which is at KJ Wallen. That's my same handle on X, formerly known as Twitter, at KJ Wallen. Facebook, just Keith Wallen. YouTube, Keith Wallen, and I have a TikTok too. I can never remember my own handle. Oh, it's at KJ Wallen too. For some reason, I thought it might be different, but yeah. So I'm on all the social media things. Yeah, YouTube, all of it. And that's it. And of course, my website, keithwallen.com. And, I think I'm on Rise Records website as well.
I think I am.
So that's cool. Yeah.
Well, it was really good getting to chat with you. I see you guys are coming through, actually, to where I grew up in Kalamazoo. You're playing the stadium out there at the end of the month. So I might have to, and it's on a weekend too. So I might have to try to come down and catch a set. I know you're not doing your solo stuff, but
nah, come on out. Yeah, please hit me up or my manager Jerome, and we'll get you some tickets, man. Dude, yeah, absolutely, please do. And thank you so much for having me and giving me your awesome platform to talk about myself and my music and my bands, and really grateful, man. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, man. Like I said, I'm at a point where it's like I could literally pick anybody just to fill a fucking number and get paid from a podcast sponsor for that episode. But like I said, after kind of finding the why, I really have been making more of a concerted effort on my end to have a conversation with people that I feel like I can have a good one with. And for whatever it's worth, like having Jason on previously, like for the Love and Death cycle, like we hit it off really easily. And so I was like, okay, if this is basically the other stage right, stage left kind of a deal, that it's like, all right, like you guys probably are going to be similar enough because you spend so much time together. So it's like if Jason was a rad conversation, and I haven't gotten to hang out with him yet because he never responds. I mean,
he's
DMs
all right.
Shit.
he's all right.
But it's a thing where like I just had a feeling that it was like, all right, I have a feeling you're going to be the same, because I think, you know, something I've been saying quite a bit is you can't get to a certain level or longevity if you're just a fucking asshole. Like someone will be like, you suck, this isn't worth it, it's not worth being confined and spending all this time with you if you're a garbage person. So I kind of had a feeling that and you know, Amy and all of them only work with really great people. So that's the other caveat. I was like, okay, if you're, you know, doing something with Adam Splitter and all that kind of stuff, then got to be of a certain level as well to be on their roster, because they don't just take on anybody.
Well, I appreciate that. It's funny. I kind of say the opposite. Some of these, you know, huge, just like stars and everything. I always say, like, to the back of my head, I'm just like, you know what? Surely they stepped on some heads to get as big as they are, to get, you know, and, jokingly, sometimes. You know, of course. Yeah. And sometimes that does happen, but then I'm like, yeah, that's probably why I'm not at that level, because I'm just nice to everybody. But I'll never change, man. I'm like I said, I try to live in gratitude, and I'm thankful to be here. Thankful to just be alive and making music, and being able to meet great people such as yourself. So yeah, man, thanks again.
So that was my conversation with Keith. Want to thank him again, and also congrats. We found out, I forgot to mention in the intro, that basically the Headspace Holiday had been picked up by Octane. And there was some interesting things that I learned about when all that happens that Keith kind of explained to me, and I don't know if it's my place to explain any of those things, but so I will not. But it was a little bit eye-opening to kind of learn a little bit more about the behind the scenes of how that side of I don't even know if you call it radio. I guess Octane technically is a radio station of sorts, but it was interesting to just kind of learn how that side of things works once, you know, a song gets picked up, and, you know, how they measure the metrics and so forth. And it was really cool to kind of learn all of that, but to really be there when, you know, Keith's song got added, you know, was really interesting, because obviously that song was something we talked about in this chat, and to see it reacting so well and people finding it and loving it is really great to see. And I think kind of speaks more to Keith is a songwriter. And it was interesting because, you know, I literally asked him, I was like, oh, you know, like, what's it going to be like if a song really starts popping off for you as a solo artist? Like, do you think it'll be held in more higher regard than anything you've kind of done with Breaking Ben or anything like that? And, you know, here we are, you know, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and the song got picked up, and, you know, just the joy and excitement from the rest of the camp to him is great. Seeing everybody in the band and the camp as well sharing Keith's song and stuff like that, just I think really also showcases what a great vibe that band has with one another, and just kind of getting to see it firsthand as well. And also ripping a quick hang with Jason when he popped in. And it was funny. My wife's like, how do you know him? And I go, oh, he was on the podcast a while ago as well. So it was just kind of interesting, and also showcases that my wife doesn't listen to the show whatsoever, but that's fine. I don't expect her to, and I think it kind of keeps me grounded at times. But it was really rad getting to hang with Keith, and this chat was really awesome, and I really want to thank him for taking the time to do it. And speaking of time, you still have time to go pick up and pre-save, pre-order the new record Infinity Now. It comes out May 3rd. And I'm sure Keith would really appreciate all of the love and support of that record. Make sure that we get him a good charting album, because you know what, those things still matter. I think it's really weird too. I just kind of was thinking about this as I said that we're the music industry, for as much as it is trying to figure out the new ways to do things and making changes. You know, like the merch cuts thing is kind of sort of going away, or at least I haven't heard people bitching about it as much. But it's a thing where I wonder if the first week album sales thing still fucking matters. Like, I know for a long time that was what bands really strive for, because that determined touring opportunities and festival offers and stuff like that, which I think is really crazy because it's like, what if someone comes out and just like has really great success that opening week and then just fucking drops off? Like, does that mean that band's not deserving? What about a band that maybe doesn't perform as well straight out the gate, but just has consistent growth and consistently just keeps doing well? But I guess maybe those aren't the metrics that everyone wants to look for because we want instant gratification, which I think is obviously stupid based on the tone of my voice of that comment. So hopefully the industry's kind of going away from that because, like I said, I don't think it really matters as much. But what do I know? I'm sitting here in my office talking to my wall, which you will hear eventually. Perspective, guys. Everything is about perspective, and sometimes doing this thing consistently puts a lot of perspective in my life. And honestly, that was something else that I thought was really rad. Talking to Keith was sort of the perspective he gained by doing ayahuasca and doing some other stuff. That was a real interesting thing, and I really wanted to explore it a little bit more. But we were kind of already wrapping up, and coincidentally today, as of when I'm recording this outro, I was listening to a podcast with Bert Kreischer and Neil Brennan. It's a really great chat. If you haven't checked out Neil's latest special, and if you go back and listen to Three Mics, or watch Three Mics, however you consume your media, just a really great comedian and someone who in the last like couple of years has really figured out how to seek out happiness for himself, realizing that something's not right, and the things that he's been doing weren't working, and sought out some alternative methods, and has seemingly kind of cracked the code for himself to be happy. I had sent Keith actually the podcast, and I was like, dude, this part's really interesting. You know, Neil's talking about doing ayahuasca and going back to before the Big Bang. And he was like, it's fucking intense. Yeah, I did it, no big deal. And then was just like, but it's fucking intense, and I don't ever necessarily want to do that again. And I was just like, oh, like the way he made it sound was like, oh, this is a common thing. And so I sent it to Keith, and he was just like, yeah, that happens. So I feel like I just need to do this at some point. I don't know if it's for everybody. I don't even know if maybe when I'm done with it, I will have said I wished I hadn't. But it seems like by and large, for those of us who are looking to explore more of ourselves mentally in different spaces and so forth, I just don't hear of anyone talking about it in a negative thing. Like the actual doing it is pretty intense and awful, but what you learn on the other side of it is so life-changing. So again, not a doctor. I don't know these things for sure. But for me personally, it's just something that I find very intriguing, and I would like to know more about the process and what it does and what it's like. So potentially that may be something I try to figure out how to do down the road. Maybe, well, no, I'm getting my throat tattooed for my 40th birthday. It's like, maybe I'll do that for my 40th, or in my 40th year. Maybe that'll be the better way to do it. I'll do it in my 40th year if I can. All that said, let's start wrapping up the episode. If you would like to keep up with Keith, you can find him on Facebook at Keith Wallen Music, Instagram at KJ Wallen, as well as Twitter, or just go to his website at keithwallen.com. Lots and lots of opportunities to see him on tour, out with Breaking Ben, solo opening up for Breaking Ben. Just so many opportunities to see Keith. Like I said, I just went and saw the Breaking Ben dudes a couple weeks ago and had a good time. I would really like to see Keith's solo band, though, so maybe I will try to hopefully see him if the solo band makes its way out here in the Midwest. Make a trek to go see him. But go support Keith and go support our podcast sponsor, Rockabilia. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. Also, I'm just going to throw this weird plug out there. If you are someone that knows somebody at the Sphere or the Fish Camp for whatever reason, Frankie is trying to get into Fish at the Sphere in Vegas. I don't... I find it a very weird request, but that dude has helped me in a lot of different things and getting different hookups and so forth. So I'm trying to pay it back forward. Maybe somebody out here who listens to the show somehow knows somebody. So if you do, shoot myself a message or shoot a DM over to the Rockabilia Instagram page and help him get into that show, because I guess he wants to go see that. And for the podcast, if you like to keep up with us, Brew Speak Pod on everything, shoot me an email at brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week with Sam the Hawk Hawkins of Drinks with Johnny podcast. That was a epic 3-hour-long conversation that covers so much. Looking forward to getting that one out. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week.